T-Wolves bounce back and snap their two-game skid versus the Blazers tonight, 117-111. I got the expert, Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And Jack, before we jump into all this action, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150. If your $5 bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, man. Wolves coming off, two really tough back-to-back losses there. Kings in overtime Friday, Clippers just yesterday afternoon. So they hosted this Portland Trailblazers team that's just beaten up, battered, bruised in their last of 7 straight home games before they now go on the road for 6 straight. And again, this Blazers team, man, they were really down just a plethora of starters. And yet, even with the young guys and the backups in, they made this one close for most of the night. They kept things tight down to the last few minutes. In fact, if you took the 15.5 points, you never really had to sweat in this one. In the end, though, Wolves get that much-needed dub they've been looking for. Rudy Gobert, he leads the way. Monster night, 25 points, 16 boards, his third straight double-double. Didn't miss a shot until a few minutes left in the game. Wolves bounce back strong, though. They get a little momentum now with their 43rd victory of the season before they do head out on the road for the next week or so. Kick us off, Jack. Give us your just biggest takeaways from this one to start.
Yeah, for me, really sluggish game. Again, the third just kind of gross basketball game in a row. And when you're playing on the fifth night in 7 days, or fifth time in 7 days, that'll definitely get you. But the Timberwolves do improve to 7-2 on the second night of back-to-backs. That is the second best record in the NBA behind the Celtics, who are 8-2. And they've won 6 second leg of a back-to-back in a row, which is obviously positive considering what we saw from this team last season and 2 seasons ago. And they really we're just kind of middle of the pack in those games. But this is a game early that just kind of reeked of a really brutal combination of arrogance and fatigue that we haven't seen from the Timberwolves very much this season. And you got complete no-shows from Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns in the first half. And when your 2 best players don't play very well, chances are the entire team is not going to play very well. I mean, Anthony Edwards, congratulations to him, became a father over the weekend. And I love and respect about Anthony plays every single night. But this is a game where I'm sure Chris Finch would have had zero problem if Anthony Edwards came to him and said, hey,
yeah,
I need a day. My head is not in it, understandably, today. And I just think it's one of those games where Ant's only playing because he wants to be able to say that he plays every game and is there for his team, but is a game where he really did not have any impact on the game. He passed pretty much every single time he touched the ball in the first half of this game. He did not make a shot until the final 30 seconds of the first half. And then it was very passive again in the third quarter and checked out because he got a little stinger on the elbow, a right elbow contusion, but came back, returned to start the fourth quarter, ended up with 13, 6, and 4, a stat line that really, I think was better than what we saw from him. He had a couple of really nice defensive reps on Anthony Simons, but again, just wasn't really consistent. And that's going to be the thing for Ant. He hasn't really been very consistent within a game or for long stretches outside of one of those earlier, 9-game winning streaks that the Timberwolves had in November when he was just fantastic. But so that's something that he's got to continue to work at. And then for Cat, 3 fouls in the first half, started 1 of 5 from the floor, only played 6 minutes. He's a guy, unlike Ant, who is for the majority of his entire career, consistency has probably been the best thing about him. And this season, understandably, with a changing role and being asked to change a lot of the things he's doing and where he's playing on the floor, hasn't been quite as consistent. It finished this one with 14-4 and 2 blocks, but only played 21 minutes because of the foul trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when he wasn't in foul trouble, I mean, he did have the first 8 points of the third quarter for the Wolves, which was nice, and was decisive and aggressive and got to the rim and used his size really well, but just wasn't really able to effectively space the floor. Still looked a little fidgety when he got the ball in the second half. Had a couple of other plays that could have been offensive fouls, didn't end up getting called offensive fouls. So just kind of a game where you're looking at your TV screen like, just kind of whenever he's out there at times. But again, beyond them, to have Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley, I wrote in the preview at Canis for this game that those two are going to have to be really big tonight, and they were. They've been tremendous in setting a professional, business-like tone in all these second half of back-to-backs for the Timberwolves this season. Rudy Gobert, again, phenomenal tonight, had 25 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal. Like you said, started 9 of 9 from the floor, tied a franchise record for most makes without a miss to start a game. Had that one miss late in the game, and he was sitting on 25 for most of that fourth quarter. His high as a Timberwolf is 26. He did that twice last season. Really thought he was going to get it tonight, but didn't. Just did a great job, I think, of just kind of keep chipping away, right? He was good in that first half, had some really nice finishes around the rim, was active on the offensive glass, but really kind of broke through in that third quarter, had 3 and 1s, 7 rebounds. I think 3 or 4 of those were offensive, and really just imposed his will and his physicality and just kind of big boyed the Blazers interior, which is what you want to see and is something that he's been phenomenal at all season long. And I think too, on the defensive end in the second half, really kind of started to flex his muscles a little bit. Obviously had that big block that led to a Mike Conley dagger 3, but I thought just did a much better job of kind of picking up ball handlers a little bit higher up when they were coming around screens instead of letting guys get so deep into the lane before starting to play his defense there and defend the rim. So I thought he did a much better job of deterring Blazers from getting into the paint and getting to the rim. Whereas in the first half, he was in a really, really deep drop. They got into the paint, made some tough floaters over him. But again, I would take deterrence over good rim, defense on shots every week, because then you don't have those shots to begin with. Right. And then Mike Conley, 19 points, 7 assists, 3 steals. He took 13 shots. Chris Finch said pregame in this game that he wanted to see more out of Mike Conley. He had taken just 4 shots in 2 of the Timberwolves' last 3 games. He was just 2 of 6 from 3, but I thought he did a much better job tonight of attacking closeouts and just being more aggressive coming around screens from Gobert. I think a lot of times he gets into that mid-range now looking to pass, whether it be those corner kicks or kicking to the strong side slot for a Jaden 3 or Nikhil 3 or Ant 3, something like that. But tonight got into that floater range a little bit more, which is something we want to see from Mike. He's historically been a very good floater player with both hands. He's one of those rare ambidextrous guys that actually prefers to take a floater with his non-shooting hand, his right hand, and is pretty good at those, but hasn't been great this season. Only 39%. He's generally in that mid-high 40s, which is in the upper echelon of the NBA, but his 39% is the lowest since 1920. And he got to the free throw line 5 times, which was great from him. So obviously when we don't get your 2 best players playing at the peak of their powers, you got to get other guys to step up. And tonight it was Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert who have done so all season long on second night of back-to-back. So it's a big hat tip to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Let me dive a little bit deeper into that little combo. Is there a tangible trend or any stats or analytics that tell us when Rudy has a good game offensively, Mike Conley usually shows up really efficient as well? Like, I just think about all the talk about, those two having such great chemistry going back to Utah and how, Mike's really the catalyst to a lot of things offensively for this team, quarterbacking the show most of the time. And so I guess, is it just a coincidence that he happened to have one of his best nights offensively on the same night Rudy did? Or is this a thing where, when one of them is clicking offensively, usually you'll see the other guy right behind him?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, honestly, most of when Mike Conley does his damage as a scorer is when he's making 3, 4, 5 3-point shots, right? And a lot of times when you see Rudy Gobert really impacting the game as a roller or on the offensive glass, he just collapses the interior of the defense, right? And in a standard defense, that low man that's guarding the opposite corner 3-point shooter is going to play in more towards the block, and it's going to open up more corner threes. And then what'll happen is the guy who's guarding the slot will then have to X out and kick out to that corner 3-point shooter. And a lot of times will open up that slot 3-point shot, which is where you see Mike Conley do a lot of his damage. So you see Mike Conley's 3-point attempts actually tend to go up when Rudy Gobert is really impactful as a scorer. But too, we've seen Mike Conley plenty of times attack out of that slot like he did tonight, get into that floater range, or get all the way to the rim like he did tonight. So there's no question that Rudy Gobert scoring the ball and being really impactful as a roller and on the offensive glass kind of weakens the interior of the defense, forces more perimeter players to help inside, and creates more opportunities for perimeter players to spot up from three or get in and attack a spread and kind of scrambling defense, if you will. So certainly something that I don't know off the top of my head in terms of what the numbers
I was
are,
just
but
curious.
definitely
Even
makes
that's
sense
a good
intuitively.
explanation. Yeah, even that's a good explanation. I know, kind of tough to put you on the spot like that. Didn't expect, you to rattle off a bunch of analytics or stats, but was just curious about that connection, because obviously we know the stereotype about those two specifically, and then just to see them both have such a great efficiency and offensively shooting night performance was just one of those things that kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, all right, usually when you get one, do you get the other? Before we move on to segment 2, I got to ask, 2 games in a row heading into this one. We talked about a little bit yesterday. Fast break points, 19-0, 19-0, back-to-back games. And then tonight, it was like 12-2 until a few minutes left in the third. I think 15-7 was the final. What kind of story, I guess, does that tell when you start to see that more consistently? And, was there a specific player or two that was kind of at fault the most, or was this a total team effort in the wrong way, in the wrong direction from what you saw?
Yeah, I think it's really a team effort, to be brutally honest with you. I think also sometimes Mike Conley and Monte Morris are both two guards that are extremely proficient in operating in the half court and aren't guys that really look to push the pace when they catch an outlet pass. They both would much prefer to kind of slow it down and get the team organized and play more in the half court. And so that certainly is a factor as well. But I think the more that you see guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels as the guys with the ball in their hands, pushing the tempo after a stop, I think that's when you see more fast break action happen. For as good as Anthony Edwards is, he's not really that much of a factor in transition in terms of grabbing the ball and just sprinting it up the floor and trying to push the pace. That's something that you'd like to see him do more. But yeah, I certainly think it's a team effort, right? The Timberwolves just don't have a lot of players on the roster that are very good transition players or are able to really create a lot of transition opportunities. And I think too, the Timberwolves have largely just been such a good half court defensive team that, they force a lot of misses. They don't necessarily force a ton of turnovers. And I think it's a little bit harder to run off of stops, especially when you're forcing teams to take a lot of mid-range shots. Those just don't create a ton of opportunities to get out and run, where misses at the rim or misses at the 3-point line create for your offense. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of the type of shots that they force defensively mixed with a ton of personnel that doesn't like to run and 2 point guards that certainly are much more comfortable operating in things in the half court, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, plenty more deep dive, including more on Karl Anthony Towns. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets when you win any $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any bet and win. Right now, T-Wolves, 25-1 to win the NBA Finals. 25-1. So you've been thinking about joining FanDuel. No better time to get in on all the action. The app, so easy to use, and they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, over-unders, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season, and it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. All right, I just want to switch gears here. Kind of a, like you said, a little slow game tonight. I just want to switch gears here and ask you this kind of broader question. 9th season for Karl Anthony Towns. And What can you say, man? 4 all-star appearances, uber talented, but you still hear all the criticism all the time, right? About him never taking that next step as far as maybe maturity or evolving certain, aspects of his game. And it kind of felt like he was turning a corner a little bit. And he has to a degree this year, right? With the, I'm another planet among the stars kind of comment, as opposed to being, the sun and the main guy on the team. But I still come on here every morning, Jack. I read all the comments from all the fans, and no one takes more heat and more criticism than Karl Anthony Towns on this team. So is it fair in your opinion? Is it all warranted? Or is it maybe just more, kind of muscle memory at this point after 9 seasons? Some people, will just continue to say that and use him as the scapegoat until the Wolves actually go far in the playoffs, win a playoff series. Because it's year 9, man. Like, if he hasn't changed by now, I guess this is probably who he is. I think that's pretty fair to say. And if nothing else, I do feel confident about that. What's your 2 cents on Karl Anthony Towns at this juncture in his career?
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of both in terms of muscle memory, but in terms of there also being warranted criticism. I think a lot of times when Karl Anthony Towns does not play very well, it's a very loud version of not playing very well, if that makes sense, just because it's a little ugly in terms of, a lot of the scuds. He doesn't often make up for poor offensive nights with really strong defensive nights. And just the kind of fidgety, flopping, awkward looking offensive plays when things aren't going his way. And 2 will have nights where he tries to force it. And so I think all of those things can kind of create a snowball tumbling down the mountain of kind of things that don't look great and warrant criticism. And a lot of times too, he'll hold the ball, and the Timberwolves really need this offense to pass the ball and get off the ball and make quick decisions. And that's something that he hasn't necessarily always done a great job of. But when he's at his best, that's what he's doing. And so I think it's just kind of things that he continues to try to work through. And unfortunately, like you said, it's year 9. I think for someone that's been in the league this long, I don't think his basketball IQ is where it needs to be for this team to really reach its full potential in terms of, being able to get up to the sum of its parts. It's a very talented roster on paper, but, obviously a clunky fit at times. And I think for Karl, the biggest thing is everybody needs him to shoot more threes. Like, Nickeil Alexander-Walker should not be shooting more threes in a game than Karl Anthony Towns. Naz Reid should not consistently be shooting more threes in a game with 10 less minutes a game than Karl Anthony Towns. And it just doesn't make any sense to me why he can't figure that out. It doesn't make any sense to me why he continues to drive into crowds over and over again. And, I think it just speaks to the low basketball IQ for someone that's been in the league for 9 years. And I do think he caught a lot of unfair criticism, especially early in his career, for having so many different coaches, so many different heads of basketball operations that didn't put enough talent around him to help him win. I think in the NBA, especially the last 8-9 years, it's been extremely difficult to just will teams to the playoffs and being successful in the playoffs by yourself with a pretty poor roster around you. We haven't seen a whole lot of that. And the guys that have been able to do it are all-time great players. And it's okay that Karl Anthony Towns is not an all-time great player. It's just, he's a very, very good player. Right. And I do think, though, that it has been encouraging to see him be so willing to adapt and adjust for this team to try to find success. And he's bought in so much more to playing defense this year than any other year of his career. And the way that he's embraced Ant and Rudy, he's done so much more work than I think anybody realizes or gives him credit for, to try to help welcome Rudy Gobert into the fold here and help push Anthony Edwards out into kind of the limelight as the number 1 guy in this team. And he's had no problem in terms of his personality doing that. And so I think it's just a matter of how much you weigh all of that stuff versus some of the on-court stuff. And the fact that I just think the Timberwolves need him to be more consistent. And for me, it starts with doing more of what you're really good at and less of what you're not so great at. And for me, that's shooting more 3-pointers and less of driving into crowds and more isolated one-on-one post-up opportunities. And when the Timberwolves made the playoffs the first time with Cat as like the main guy 2 years ago, he was incredibly efficient as a driver, and he just hasn't been the same in terms of his efficiency since he got hurt last year. That's just the reality of things. And so we'll see and kind of how that continues to either be a story or not be a story the rest of the season. But But yeah, I mean, again, the Timberwolves are just lucky that on a night like tonight, he doesn't play very well, that they have a very deep bench that is able to make
Absolutely.
up for it if we want to get into that.
Absolutely. And that's the big difference, I think, from, the old Carl versus the new Carl and just how he fits with this team. Yeah. Let's switch gears and go back to our Monte Morris watch, our new favorite daily bit. Anything new, underwhelming, overwhelming about what you thought, or any other bench guy you think deserves a little bit of spotlight for good or bad tonight?
Yeah, I think, we can start with Monte, but for the bench as a whole to win 39-18, that's a very good night for the Timberwolves bench. And Morris was a big part of it, right? He had, again, the scoring efficiency hasn't necessarily been where you want it to be. 5 points on 8 shots. He only made one of his 6 jumpers tonight, which was not great. Obviously, he had the one putback effort, which was nice to see on a missed floater that he had. But he had 7 assists, which is the most that he's had in the Timberwolves uniform. And he did turn the ball over tonight, finally, his second turnover as a member of the Timberwolves. Had it on that really kind of lame, lazy inbounds play where he just kind of got his lunch taken from there. But also had a great defensive night. We've seen that from him. I think his defense has been much louder and much more impactful than any of us predicted it would be with him coming in. I think he's had a few kind of sequences in every single game where he's made some really, really key defensive stops, whether it be kind of a little chase down block if a guy beats him, or having a quick hand steal that can result in transition. And tonight it was a wonderful defensive sequence, locking up Anthony Simons, forcing an air ball that, then led to a transition run out. But beyond Monte Morris, I think you got to look at the fact that for Morris himself, he was able to create, 18 points off of his 7 assists, 4 3-pointers tonight, which was huge. He had 2 assists to Nikhil for 3 and 2 assists to Naz for 3. And we've seen the 3-point percentage of the Timberwolves bench jump about 5 points since Monte Morris has got here, compared to when he got here is about 35% when he
pretty good.
He didn't play, up to near 40 now with him in the lineup, which has been great. He did that again tonight. Helped Naz Reid and Nikhil both get into a rhythm. For Nikhil, 13 points, 4 of 6 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, but just had a great tone defensively. Got up into guys, guarded, was just hounding guys at the point of attack. Had a couple of steals. Again, did a great job pushing the pace, which was nice. And then for Naz, right? Made 4 threes for the 9th time in his career. The Wolves are now 6-3 in those games. And making 3-point shots is a big barometer for Naz's impact on the game. He's been at least plus 16 in the plus minus department or better in the last 5 games in which he's had 4 or more threes, and that happened again tonight. He's plus 16 tonight, which I believe is a team high for the Timberwolves. And you look at the bench, right? Kyle Anderson plus 14, Naz Reid plus 16, Monte Morris plus 8, and Ant off the bench plus 9. But Ant played most of his minutes with the bench guys. So nice to see that the bench unit rounding into form. And then Slow-Mo, I thought, did a great job of kind of helping the Timberwolves play big, if you will, and impose their size. Had 9 points, 5 assists, and really highlighted, I think, what was a way that the Timberwolves need to continue to use their size to their advantage, and that he would drive versus a small. He'd get a guard on him, and the defense would kind of collapse in the paint, which opened up opportunities for Rudy Gobert to kind of slide around that pack to create dump-off opportunities for dunks, which was another big reason why Rudy was able to be so efficient with his first 9 makes of the game, and then made some floaters. And then Mike O'Grady pointed out on the broadcast, he had a dunk and a 3-pointer made in the same game, which is not something we see much from Slow-Mo. But I thought Slow-Mo was a catalyst for a lot of good offense tonight, which is exactly what you want to see. And when he's at his best, I think he really gets the ball moving, is able to kind of take advantage of some smaller mismatches. So great night from Slow-Mo and from the Timberwolves bench as a whole.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun to see. Very refreshing for sure as they go on this long road trip coming up. One quick segment left. We will preview that long road trip and the Pacers game coming up Thursday night. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Guys, Prize Picks, it's without a doubt the most fun I've had playing daily fantasy, because you can win up to 100 times your money this basketball season. That means with as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn your $10 into $1,000. And it's so easy to play. I can make my picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. PrizePicks also now offers Apple Pay, quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. And here's my favorite part. With the PrizePicks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. That makes PrizePicks the only daily fantasy platform around that offers you extra injury insurance to give you that extra peace of mind. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnNBA at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a 100% bonus match up to $100. All right, Jack, fun's over, man. Now you got to pack your business attire because it's time to get serious. Wolves really got to dial it in now. They got to clock in. They got to get to work. 6 straight Wolves games now on the road coming up. West Coast trip, that's packed in there. And on top of all that, 2 back-to-backs in the fold as well. Pacers, Cavs, Lakers, Clippers again, Jazz twice, and then you come back home. And who do you get? You get the champs, the Nuggets. So sounds like a gauntlet to me, but hey, what do I know? You're the expert. What's the top 1 or 2 things that should be kind of on their to-do list, so to speak, during this tough stretch now coming up?
Yeah, I think it's just really be able to impose your size. Indiana is a team that does not play any defense, has no type of interior presence whatsoever. Cleveland has a 2 big lineup the same way the Timberwolves do, but Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns should be able to overpower Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And then you have LA, and then you have Utah twice. And those 2 teams, the Clippers and Utah, again, 2 teams that are susceptible to really struggling against size. And then the Lakers, right? You're able to match their 2 best players in LeBron James and Anthony Davis with Kat and Rudy Gobert inside. And the other thing too, I mean, you're going to have some back-to-backs in here, right? You get Thursday, Friday, Indiana, Cleveland is a back-to-back. And then you get 2 games in Utah in the same spot, not a back-to-back. But then Utah, you're in Utah on a Monday. You lose an hour traveling back to Minneapolis on Tuesday to play Denver. So that's going to be tough. So they're kind of making up for not having many back-to-backs when they got off to that really fast start the first 2/3 of the season here. But, you know, I think the nice thing about the Timberwolves in this road trip is, yes, it's a 6-game road trip, but they're only in 4 different cities, which has to help quite a bit in terms of the light travel. And Indiana to Cleveland is just a hop, skip, and a jump. That's probably a 25, 30-minute flight. So not a whole lot of wear and tear on the body, I would think, in this matchup and or in this road trip, excuse me. And, you know, 4 games, I think, where you absolutely have to have them in terms of Indiana, Cleveland without Donovan Mitchell. The Cavs announced today that he had a PRP injection after suffering a bone bruise in his knee that hasn't been healing the right way. So he's going to miss that game. And that's a got to have it set of games Thursday, Friday. And then you got to have both those games in Utah. I know that they've had some exciting players that have come on. Keontae George, who was the first pick of the Rudy Gobert trade that conveyed over to the Jazz, has been really good for them so far this season. But you've got to win both
Walker
of those
Kessler
games.
still doing Walker Kessler
He's been
stuff?
terrible. He's been terrible most of the year. Yeah, he's been injured. He's been injured a decent amount, but I think losing Mike Conley has really hurt Walker Kessler's development, no question about it. And then they just haven't had a whole lot of different options outside of Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George. And so it's just been inconsistent production for them. And it's, you know, kind of been a tough season, I think, after they showed so much promise early in the year last year and then decided to sell out and trade everyone and then really bottomed out. And again, this year have, you know, shown flashes of being able to be a productive team. And then they sell off at the trade deadline again. I think that's got to be kind of demoralizing for a team that's really trying to prioritize development. But that Rudy Gobert trade has not been as pretty as the Donovan Mitchell one has been for them getting Lauri Markkanen back. So I'd say it's a game where a road trip where you've got to go 5-1. You've got to win all 4. You've got to win Indiana, Cleveland, Utah, and then split the LA series. I think you just don't buy yourself a lot of room for error when you kind of lose that kind of pee down your leg Kings game, and then and then that Clippers game, right? That was right there in a game they certainly could have won. We're up by as many, I think, as 14, and let that one slip. So this is kind of where you gotta make up your bad losses on the road here. But should be a fun test for the Wolves, and certainly a good slate of games that should be fun for Wolves fans to take a peek at here.
Well done tonight, my man. As always, you're an elite NBA mind. Wolves bounce back tonight. They snapped that 2-game skid, 119-114 over Portland. 7 home games. That came and went. Fun while it lasted. Kind of. Not really, actually. they really didn't do much there. But Wolves now have this 6-game road trip. That starts Thursday in Indianapolis versus the Pacers. Tip-off for that one, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. As always, huge shout-out to everyone that joined us on the stream. You guys are awesome. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Quick reminder, got to go check out all Jack's work on Twitter, at JRBorman13. Anything we should be on the lookout for? I haven't asked you that in a while. Anything you've been working on? Canis Hoopus, anything we can check out as of late?
Been grinding away, man. A lot of
I
previews and recaps on my side. So
Love it.
Nothing on the immediate horizon, but
got it.
Yeah,
well, there's always good stuff over there, so make sure to check that out. And quick reminder as well, make sure you check out the entire crew on the Minnesota Basketball Party. That's each and every Wednesday. Sam Ekstrom hosting, Ron Johnson, Carol Evans, Reggie Wilson, Ben Beacon, always ripping it up over on the Locked On Wolves podcast. That's each and every day as well. That'll do it for us tonight. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.